So today is May 5th, 2024. We are here with Vernon and Lynn Perry, longtime members of the Globe Arizona Stake. I'd like to start out with your backgrounds. So why don't, Brother Perry, can you tell us a little bit about your background, the community you grew up in, that type of thing, your family?
My mother grew up in Safford. She was there all of her high school years and graduated from Safford. And when I was first born, I was born in Phoenix, but we just happened to be in Phoenix to be born. We ended up living in Safford until I was probably 6. And then my mother had remarried. I have 3 siblings, and my mother had remarried an insurance adjuster. She worked for my grandparents' insurance business. So his business was up here in Globe, so that's what brought us up to Globe, Arizona. They were non-LDS. Had a lot of times they were like anti-LDS as far as teaching and whatnot. To me, they were pretty strong in the Methodist church, and we attended Methodist or Episcopal church in early years, not a whole lot. But when I came up to Globe, we lived over in Claypool, Arizona for probably about 2 years, and then we moved to Globe and lived out in Crestline. That's where we were raised up through high school. And during that time, we attended an Episcopal church. Sometimes we attended the activities at the Methodist church or the Presbyterian church, because they always seemed to have a lot of youth and dances and activities. And when I was younger, they used to have what was called primary dances at the LDS church down, the old one that was down near the post office. And my brother and sister and I'd go to those, and I think it was a dime or something to get in. So a lot of people in town that were non-LDS still talk about and remember learning to dance and some etiquette and different things at those dances they had, primary dances, maybe once a month or once every few months. So that was the association with it. And then growing up and going to school, a lot of my friends were LDS kids, and they maintained a standard. I thought I had a pretty high standard for living in Globe, not having a reputation for carousing and partying and different things. So those groups, and even within the other church associations we had with the kids, those are the ones that stood out and were examples. And so we graduated from high school. The first year I went to Eastern Arizona College. That was also the time that people in my period of time, I graduated in 1966, you had to worry about the draft and going to Vietnam. And a lot of my classmates were drafted. Some of them, to be able to pick the service you wanted to be in, actually signed up. So a lot of my classmates and people around my age had served in Vietnam. They had a lottery at that time, and my lottery number was very, very high, meaning that there were a lot of people that were chosen before I was. So that gave me the opportunity to go to college without having to worry about it. Unless things got really bad, then they'd start picking the names out of that pool of people. So I went down to Yale, and when I left the house to pack to go down, my mom came out and had to talk with me and said, "Now, you watch out for those girls down there. They'll want to marry somebody. especially from out of town. And especially watch out for those Pima girls, because they want to marry you and they want to have lots of kids, and your whole idea and career might be diverted some other way. So I went down there, and a lot of the friends of people I associated with were LDS kids, because predominantly the kids at the Eastern Arizona were. And they were good examples. We had a lot of activities we did together. They had dances, they had formals. I dated a girl from Thatcher for a while that was LDS, and she ended up moving the second semester. So the second year, when I went back, I had a friend that we did a lot of different things together, and he tried to teach me golf. Took me out one time and never invited me again because I laughed the whole time, and I just thought it was like a hockey stick. And well, we were good friends, and we ended up going to double dating to a winter formal, and he had a date, and I had a date with a friend, a girl from Globe, and his date was Lynne, and that's when I first met Lynne, and so my mom was right. She came around quite often, and my friend was, they were more friends and they were serious about it. So she was still in high school. She was a senior and I was a sophomore at college, and we started dating and doing a lot of things together. And probably one of the attractions is with any of the LDS people, their standards were high. She had high standards. She liked kids. She was good with her mom and dad that were older. She was good with her nephews and nieces that she took care of, and she was pretty easygoing. And so I graduated from Eastern Arizona. Same time she graduated from high school. We went to a lot of her high school events, and I went to Northern Arizona University for a year and a half, and we dated back and forth. She was staying with her sister in Phoenix and working, and I would go down and see her. And so January, the first of it, we talked about being married. I didn't tell him that story. She didn't know this story for a long
Yeah,
time.
I just found this out recently.
My sister and I, when we were going to East Arizona College, stayed in an apartment that my grandparents had, and it worked out well. My sister cooked and cleaned, and I stayed there, and we got along well. And we thought, since we got along so well, and it worked out, you had two separate rooms in your own section, that I would put in for married housing up at NAU, with the idea that my sister would stay in the married housing with me. Well, we were accepted, and the married housing asked, "We need to see your marriage license." And I said, "Oh my gosh, this isn't going to work." And it took a year and a half to even get accepted to go in. One just came up that time, and I asked Lynne, I said, "We have a place to live, you want to get married?" She said, "Sure." So we had the month of January to get everything ready. So at the end of January 31st, we got married that day. And then the next day we loaded her things and we drove up to Flagstaff and went to school the next day. So we were married, went to school the next day, and we've been married 54 years. And so when when we first started up there, the question was always, what church are you going to go to? And while I was going to NAU, I'd go to Episcopal church. Sometimes I'd go to a Methodist church. And after we got married, 1 week we'd go, or a month we'd go to my church, and another time we'd go with her. And the missionaries came over a number of times. She invited them, and just a fellowship, I guess. So they talked, and we visited, and I knew that was back then when they had Brother Brown. I don't remember those.
He's too young.
They were
He could recite the missionary lessons.
the missionary lessons were memorized, and the character they used was a Brother Brown. So the answers were predictable, and I'd taken them so many times I could recite the whole thing, and I'd answer the questions before they asked the question. So since then they've changed that. You teach more from the spirit and from the heart instead of a memorized script that's planned to get answers out of it. So I listened to them, and one of the biggest decisions was Lynn is the person she is because of the church. I'm not going to change her. If she joins, and she probably would have made some arrangements that we could live in harmony one way or another, but she was who she was because of the church. And so at that time I decided I needed to be baptized. And so we were baptized. I was baptized. We had our first daughter a year after we were married. And so we, at that time, you had to wait a year after you were baptized and before you could go to the temple. And so our daughter was...
She's 4 months old.
4 months old. So one of the special things we have that a lot of people married in the temple don't is when you're sealed and then they bring the baby in. And the rest of the other 5 kids were born in the covenant. So there is something special about seeing your little daughter across from you with the pronouncement that this family can be forever. So, you know, those are things that, as the conversion. Part of it just because of housing came available, it didn't come available, and that it opened up an opportunity to, instead of waiting months and months and months or putting off being married and later sealed, it happened quicker. We dated each other for a couple of years.
2 years and 2 months.
Yeah. So that was it, that conversion part of it. We finished, both of us graduated from NAU. Lynn always, the idea was, I'm going to be married. I don't need to get a job. I don't need to have any more college. I've done my thing. Well, to stay in that apartment in married housing on campus, one of us had to be in school all the time, a full-time student, summer, all year. So she'd go on the summer sessions, I'd go in the others, and sometimes we could work it out where she could take some classes. And reason we decided that she needs to graduate was we had some friends up there that been killed in an accident the husband had, and the wife and the child, they had nothing after that. You know, they didn't have insurance, they had support from the family, but we saw others later on that what happens if something happens to me and your income is cut? What are you gonna do? You know, you look at the alternatives, there weren't a whole lot of things that could run a family. So probably one of the best blessings was she stayed and finished. So, and I stayed an extra year so she could. And she did her student teaching. We taught 2 years in Chino Valley. Wasn't something I really liked. We came back to Globe, because Globe was home. We could have gone to Gila Valley, but we had offers of jobs here. So we came back here and we stayed. We've been here ever since.
So, Sister Perry, tell us a little bit about your background, because you didn't grow up in Globe.
No, I was born in Safford. My first almost 5 years we lived in Eden, where my family, we have a long line of people that lived there. And when I was about 5, we moved to Pima, which was just across the river. I went to school there, started first grade, graduated in a class of 20. 10 of us started first grade together, so we were kind of a close group. And there's about 15 of us still around. My mother was very ill. She had a rheumatic heart, and I was the youngest of 6, so I was the one that was stayed home and helped with her and took care of her. As a senior, the girls always went to the college to see what was there, and that's where I met Vernon. And yes, I was dating his friend, and we met at
Winter formal.
the winter formal. That was what it was. So, my family were members. My family has a lot of history in the Gila Valley. We came, in doing family history, my people came into the valley in the late 1800s, and we just had a family Easter and learned a lot of new things. The town of Eden was originally called Curtis, and my great-grandfather was the original postmaster, and they needed a new name, so he was actually the one that named Eden. And just both sides came in. My great-grandfather on one side is Ebenezer Bryce. The Bryce Canyon was named for. And there's a Bryce, Arizona. So a lot of roots and a lot of church history and family history is kind of part of my background. I think that's why I find it so interesting, because when I do church history, I had family members that were there. So go back a long time, and
growing up in Pima,
uh-huh.
did you ever have the opportunity to travel through Globe?
Oh, yes. Growing up, I always, you go through Globe. That was the last place on earth that you wanted to live. I wouldn't tell people when I was dating Vernon that he was from Globe, because they were kind of rough, and Globe was part of our stake at that time, and so any association with the people from Globe was like ball games, and they were kind of rough, and just Globe didn't have the pretty green fields and the pretty mountains and all of that, so it wasn't some place that I ever wanted to grow up or raise my kids or be there. But after we'd finished school, it was time to come back. My mom had passed away not too long after Vernon and I had gotten married. My dad was still in the Gila Valley. His parents were here. So we felt like it was time to come back and be close to family. And my dad was older. Vernon's parents were older. And we felt like we wanted our kids to be in a place where they would be around family. And we have found that we love living in Globe. We've it's been good for us. The kids have all gone to school here. We had the opportunity to teach in I taught in the elementary. He taught in the high school. In our last 5 years, we were both at the junior high. But it's been a good place for us.
What were your impressions of the church in Globe when you actually moved here?
It was it was really good. We really the members were good. They were good, strong members. I remember being so excited to be back in the St. Joseph stake. So we just had moved back. We were in my home stake. Our stake conferences and everything were down in Thatcher at that time, and if you had any meetings that you needed to, you could go to Thatcher. So I was able to come home and be able to go there, and we were here about 2 months, and they divided the stake, and so we became our own stake, which was our stake president was Benny Joe Cecil, and our bishop when we came was Ellsworth, right? Taylor, okay. Yeah, Bishop Taylor, yeah. But then he went to the stake right after that. So, yes. So anyway, it was...
What did you think when the stake was created then? Were you thinking, oh no, I'm not going to get to go back to Thatcher, or...
That was it. I was, like I said, I was really, really disappointed that we had divided, but it was exciting because we were in a new beginning. You know, that things were new. Different people were having different callings. The stake president that was called down there was Seth Mattice, who was a relative, and he was killed right after in a freak accident right after that. So he wasn't stake president very long. But growing up, the 24th of July celebrations were a big thing to go to, and I remember being disappointed that in some of the activities that we had here, and it made it seem like it was more important to try to be involved and try to help grow the stake, I think might be the term that we would use, is how we could contribute to it. But no, it was when we were first here, the ward that we attended was down at, which is now the Miles Mortuary. I remember the building was kind of unique in that it had like an upstairs area where they had classrooms. It had a basement. We had a junior Sunday school room at that time, which we would probably refer to as a primary room. I remember, do you remember they had that red light? So if somebody spoke too long, they would start flashing the light, and you could see the light flashing on the podium, and that you would see the reflection on their face. Not like they kick you now if you're talking too long. At that time, they'd flash the light. But I remember it was Taylor, and then was it... D. Flake was our second bishop, or we.
I think I was thinking it was Taylor before when in St. Joseph stake, I think.
Well, it's all in the book.
Yeah.
And then, I was thinking then.
Because Taylor was this in the stake presidency, but. I remember that Jane Allen was our Relief Society president, and I was one of her counselors. And I felt like at that time I was awfully young to be a counselor in Relief Society, but it worked, and it was good.
So, go ahead.
Then the stake building, when they sold that building to the YMCA, the Miami Ward became the stake building. And then across the street, they've had a double wide that served as a stake offices, And that was like that until they got the new building built.
So soon after the stake was created, plans were made to build the new building. What do you remember of the process of building a new building, fundraising, work, anything like that stand out?
At that time, I don't remember what the percentage was, but the church policy was the local membership provided, at one time it was 80%. Salt Lake provided 20% of the funding. So they had a lot of projects. They sold different types of dinners. They had big events. I remember we had one of the things that a lot of the families did was they gathered as many friends as you could, you prepared a meal for them in your home, and whatever the restaurant type cost would have been, that's kind of what you ask as a donation to the family that then would go into the building fund of the church. At that time, a lot of the work on the buildings were done by the members. A lot of cleanup, a lot of prep. Some of them had skills, particularly in the mining town when they had strikes and whatnot. A lot of the skilled laborers, tradesmen and whatnot, were able to work in the building the stake. Benny Joe Cecil had a trucking company. Through his company, he was able to get a lot of the land work done, a lot of the prep work on the site, and finish work. And then the lower, what they call the lower field now, was belonged to the state, Globe Arizona State. It wasn't in what they use now as facilities management. It was taken care of directly by the Globe State. And so a lot of work in taking care of that property down there, the buildings, kitchen, and putting a roof on and different things, people in the state volunteered to do that. So a lot of it was that. It was kind of overwhelming coming as a beginning teacher, and Lynn wasn't working at that time, and they had assessments, special building assessments that we look at that and we go, oh my gosh, I don't know if we're going to be able, but.
So it's like tithing and everything else, and then special assessment, right?
Right. And then we would like you to spend this much time every month if you can do it, prep work outside, raking the rocks. I remember D. Flake and I helping put a sprinkler line across the parking lot from the main part of the church building all the way up to where the trees are on the outside edge. Looking back at it now, it gave a lot of people that didn't have certain skills to learn some skills, learn how to work together and learn patience sometimes, and how to people that you knew but you didn't know real well, that they actually had some skills that were there, and they brought them out, and because of those things, the stake building became quite a premier building. I think it and the one down in Thatcher at the time were one of the last of this design. This is one of the most expensive designs they had because of the way the brick layers are, the insulation, and then the block on the rest of it, and then the steeple and the different parts of it, the way the gym was laid out. Thatcher stake is very, very similar to the building. But after that, because construction costs, even when they were planning this, I remember I can't remember the exact figure, but the figure they put in and said, okay, this is what it's going to cost to build and develop this property. And this is going to be the local responsibility. And then before we'd even gotten moving on it very long, the price had doubled. Because at that time, cost of materials, cost of labor had gone astronomically out of sight. So those are some things that, you know, they cause, in your mind, you had to adjust for them, adjust for your time and money, and wait for the blessings, I guess.
So, yes, this. Well, you raised your children here. What was it like to raise children here in the Globe Stake? Type of experiences does that cause you to remember? What was that like?
I know our ward at that time, we had all of the young families that were growing up, so they had really, really good friends. I think it was good for them to. I was brought up in a LDS community, so you know everybody had the same beliefs, but our kids had to learn to be strong, and they seemed to be examples for a lot of the kids in their schools. They would say, okay, well, you know, I would get calls from different moms and say, okay, are your kids going to be able to attend this? And if our kids were able to attend it, then they thought it was okay for their kids. But I think it was, they had to be strong. They had to be examples. With Vernon teaching at the high school, Verlin always said if she sneezed in school, in a class, her dad would know before the end of the day or the end of the class what she had done. So they had to be pretty good, and I think it was good for them. They had good experiences. They had good friends. I
think, like she said, that probably made them stronger. I think a lot of the LDS kids that I grew up with in high school, we knew who they were, and we expected standards out of them. And if they went over the edge or something and took up partying or drinking or something like that, they were called out. They said, even the kids that were non-members, they'd say, why are you doing that? That's not the person you are. Even though I wasn't a member, I kept the same standards. And if you went with your friends out someplace to a party or something, people try to give you something to drink or something. And my own friends say, he doesn't drink. He doesn't do this. And I think the same with our kids growing up, that people knew who they were, they knew who they were, and they knew what that standard was. Because if they ever broke that standard, then it was hard for them to recover or, I don't know, regain some of that respect back. But I think being in a non-LDS town, it kept them on the straight and narrow more so that they knew what that standard was, and they knew everybody was looking at it. Whether we were in a job even, both of us. I remember we went in when we were married, going to NAU, they had a country western dance hall that they brought in some really good country western bands. It was called the Museum Club or the Zoo Club. It's still around up there. A very, very popular place. But I remember people coming and say, why were you there? Or what were you doing? And I remember someone that taught seminary, he mentioned to someone that when they had a band there that he really liked, he went and listened to them. And a non-member called him out kind of on it, says, I know who you are, and I know what your standards are. Should you have been in that place? Not because of the dancing, but because all the drinking and stuff that went on. But so you people know. My students at school knew what my standard was. We had a picnic in the park for the alumni. They know. Some of them students now. Oh, it's Mr. Perry. You can't be doing that. And they know that they didn't offer anything like that to me, and they knew what the standards were, and most of them respected us for that. I don't think I've ever been called out for being.
And I think that was good for the kids. The kids had that same thing growing up. They had their church friends that they associated with and were able to do things, and it was good for them. Like I said, I always thought what was the last place on earth that I'd want to live, but being here and having our kids grow up, it's been really good.
Before we started the video, you mentioned something interesting. I don't remember exactly what the words were, but you were talking about girls' camp and how your sons had been to girls' camp many times. Do you want to talk about that? Talk about experiences you had with girls' camp and what that means that your sons were there so often.
Yeah. One of the things you do as a dad is some of my kids to this day think I used them for slave labor. And so when we were assigned to go up and help put the girls' camp, which was an old YMCA camp together to operate it for that time, they always knew that they had to go up and get the water ready and the generators, and we ended up hauling all the different things up there.
The ice
For
cream
the
truck.
most part, they liked it. If they could go fish, they were fine. And they went up and helped. We both were up there the whole time as camp caretakers. We lived in a trailer off to the side, and
Well, you were the priesthood there,
yeah, we were assigned as one of the priests that were up
and
there.
I usually did crafts.
So the boys grew up. The girls, the two little ones weren't around then.
Yeah, they were, but not as much.
Not so the other kids go. They take care of the different things, and then we found out when the girls up there thought that our boys were cute and worth chasing around. We thought that's probably the time they need to not go anymore, and I think the stake president thought the same thing, and at least the girls' camp leader. I mean, they stayed away from them. They didn't bother the girls, but the girls seemed to be attracted to new people in camp. So I think they ended up staying with Grandma and Grandpa sometimes, and then after that they changed the camp up to
Faithful Pines.
Faithful Pines.
But the boys, even now, they will start singing the girls' camp songs, and their wives go, "Where did you learn that?" Girls' camp. So that we started. You started driving the ice cream truck up, and the flat tires on the way, and
So I'm not familiar with the ice cream truck. Tell us about the ice cream truck. That sounds pretty exciting.
I don't remember exactly where it came from, but it ended up over at Benny Joe Cecil's lot. The YMCA might have acquired it before the Y closed. Benny Joe Cecil, it was a 1951 Ford box on the back that had salt chambers in it that you could run it and it'd keep cold. And it was their refrigerator. It'd keep cold for days and days without having to run it. And Benny Joe Cecil they'd haul it up there on a flatbed trailer, and it got part way up and it quit. So they said, just roll it off of there. it'll start. And they ended up driving it up there. So after that, it was, I usually took one or two of the sons with me, and we drove it up. We'd get up the hill, and it'd quit. We'd go a little further, and it'd quit. And
Or it would have
it
a
was
flat tire.
always an adventure. We set it on fire a few times. That was when President Taylor was in the stake presidency and was over girls' camp, and we got up there, and he came up in the middle of the night. We had it rolled down the bottom of the hill trying to start it, and he came up and he says, it's going to be all right. He said, kneel down, we're going to have a prayer. He had a lot of faith in anything. And he says, now let's calmly see what's wrong with it. We'd melded all the wires in it. We spliced them together. And the darn truck started up again, and we were able to get it up on the property with all the food in it. But, those were, seeing his testimony and demonstrating it adds to your testimony. The other thing that we got out of it, and I think our boys did, was the campfire programs that they had. We'd go up and sit off on the side or something, and the talent those girls had, the talent that their leaders had and taught them, and then the last night, they always had a testimony meeting. And you see young women that never had a testimony that bared their souls as to what camp meant to them and what the church meant to them. And you still see them. Your wife's one of them.
I was going to say, what do you remember about girls' camp and the scariest thing that ever happened?
And what?
The scariest thing that ever happened at girls' camp?
Tell me.
When Martha
did.
Remember, she almost. Have you heard the story of Martha almost going over the falls?
Oh,
I think that was Laura.
Was it Laura? I thought it was Martha.
Like girl. They had a falls that they walked up to that was 180, 200 feet from the top to the bottom, and some girls wanted a Kodak moment, and they crawled out over on the rock ledge, and down at the bottom you shoot a picture of the people up there, and a wind. There were, I know of at least 10 deaths, not from girls' camp, but over the years that people have gotten blown off of there, pushed off of there. One case they studied for years whether the husband pushed his wife off. Another, there was gravel up there and you slip on it and people fell off. People tried to climb up it. So when you're looking at a couple of girls over there and you're trying to see how are you going to get them? Get off of there.
I
and
know.
then you're worried about them finding footing to get off of it.
So all these years, I've always thought that was Martha that almost went off, but the
it was definitely a flake girl.
it was definitely a flake girl. But later, Jason's Eagle Project was actually redoing the showers up there, and he called a few days ago, and he was really excited because his ward is having a youth. Is it a youth activity up at the old girls' camp? And he's excited to go up and see his showers.
One of the things that, this is kind of a different topic, the two of you have been known as sort of historians in the community, also been known, as people who are very diligent in family history, genealogy work, but also, even community history. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, go ahead. You can talk about the community.
I've always admired people that lived here that were a generation or two older, and they knew all the history of Globe, the building, what happened in the mining industry, what happened with the outlaws, what happened to how Globe came about, how it became a mining community, and how it progressed and the changes in it. And I thought, man, those are interesting. But when you live in a community for a long time and you start reading those stories, and then you associate with the historic museums, those people that come in and research those stories are fascinating. So then you become one of those older generations that you're kind of a walking encyclopedia of some of the history, and that you can share it with people. And we try to share that with other younger generations. There's a lot of young people that are really interested in any kind of history or genealogy. There's some fantastic stories that have been here. I can't remember, a long time ago, a number of the presidents of the church and general authorities have mentioned about serving, whether you serve as a mission or whether you serve your community, or whether you serve your fellow man, that you get blessings and you get paid, not money-wise, but you're paid in the feelings that you get from helping them. So we've done volunteer still, after we've been retired 20 years from the school, we still do a number of things with them, the History Museum and the community concert. So those have allowed us to work with the community and share talents that we have and intermingle with them, and allows the community to help grow itself a little bit. That's your turn.
My turn. Well, the family history has always been, it's always been an interest, who am I, where did I come from? When I do church history, if I do American history, I've had family members who have been there and experienced, and I like to dig in and if I go someplace, I want to find out the history, and then I want to find out, did I have somebody there, or did they experience it? What was it like? I have a story of a great grandmother who it was her birthday the day that Joseph Smith was killed, and she talked about her waiting for her dad to come home, and when he did come home, she was expecting a birthday present, and when he came home, he was very sad, and told them the family about Joseph Smith's death, and even up to the time she died, she always said, on her birthday, it was a happy day, but it was also a sad day, because she really remembered those events. And when they do the church history, when the pioneers came across the plains, and I think trying to find out about them relates to who I am, and why I do things the way I do, why I feel the way that I do. They came before me, and would they be proud of who I am? I'm proud of them, and I just enjoy family history. It doesn't matter whose it is. Like when Vernon was talking about working at the museum, I always remember this big man. We were just happened to be at the museum, and it was closed. But this man came, and he was knocking on the door, and if someone knocked, we always went and just to see what they needed. And he was from England, and this was the only time that he was going to be in Globe, and he was trying to look for his grandfather. Well, I was able to find his grandfather's death certificate and find out, information about him living here. And I looked up, and this great big huge man, and he's bawling. And he said, "I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me." I wanted to say, "Well, it's the spirit of Elijah," but I couldn't say, I couldn't say that to him. But being able to help other people experience, and to me, it's like on both sides of the veil. We're helping him here, and we are. I'm looking forward to the hereafter, so I can actually meet these people, and hoping that that I've gotten all of them. I think that's my major concern, is I don't want to get up there and someone come to me and say, "Why didn't you get my work done? Why didn't you look a little bit harder for me?" So that's kind of my love, and I don't know why it comes very natural, and it's exciting for me to do.
I think a lot of it too is you want to preserve some of those stories and share them with others. You want to preserve people's heritage. I know a lot of history about the Gila Valley also. Part of it's through Lynne, but part of it's from my family. It was down there for a long time. And it's interesting when you meet somebody and you know their name. It's not, "My name is Vernon Perry." It's, "Who are you?" "Well, I'm Lynn Kempton, husband." So, okay, I know Lynn. And so those connections are there. And after you've gone a couple generations, some of that family history and ties are lost. We were down there the other day, and I was interviewing some kids that were up on the mountain, make sure they were supposed to be in the cabin. I started asking them about the history of their family a little bit, and they knew a little bit of it, but they didn't go back very far, which was fine. But that's important that we preserve those stories. Like Lynn had said, that what did they endure in being here in that period of time? And those things need to be shared and passed on. Lynn's drilled it into our own kids, so they know quite a bit. And I think all of them have a love for family, and they ask about it, and they can repeat it. Now that next generation, they need to pass that on to find out, why did they come to Arizona? Why are they here? And why are they ended in the Gila Valley? And later on, well, why did you guys end up in Globe? So
I think the hardships that they went through, and the experiences that they had.
and we think we have hardships, but when you review some of the things that they went through and endured, it gives you a testimony that, yeah, maybe I can handle these difficulties also.
One thing that you'd mentioned before we started the video, this is a bit of a different topic, but I think it's a very interesting one, is that the two of you have served, I guess it'd be like a service missions in Nauvoo. Or do you want to explain how that works, what your experiences have been, and that you've done it like maybe 10 different times or something like that?
Go ahead.
Well, we started out. We went to a family history conference that they had in Nauvoo. Vernon and I decided we were going to have an experience, so we took the train back, which really was a fun experience. We went to the conference, and then we had a friend who was a missionary there that had gone to college with us at NAU. And she kept telling us all of these things that, we needed to come to Nauvoo, we needed to do this, we needed to do that. And she gave us a name of at that time, the Nauvoo Pageant Missionaries. And when we called them, we just called to see what you needed to do, how you got involved, what you could do. And actually, she was a sister of one of our friends that lived here in Globe at one time. And so they just said apply. Ted and Lynn Clough had been out there. Who else was out there that we knew? Anyway, there were a couple of others.
There's a lot of people at some place in our lives, whether Flagstaff when we lived there, or the Gila Valley, or Globe even, that we've run into, and they're out driving a team of horses, or they're sewing, or they're something, or even participating in the pageant on the stage. So it's been interesting to.
So the first year we applied. I applied in costumes. Vernon applied in security. And the first year we went out, Vernon had been working on a fire, and he was sick, and we got in, and I have a tendency that when I get in and start driving, I don't stop like he stops every 10 miles. But we drove straight out, and the first thing that we got to Nauvoo, I drove 24 hours to get there, because by the time it was time to stop, it was too late, and I didn't want to get a motel for just a few hours. So anyway, when we get there, and I always remember these two fawns are on the side, and it seemed like they were greeting us to Nauvoo. Anyway, we got there, and they needed Vernon that night to work security. So anyway, we started, and that was 2013. And that was the first year that they did the British pageant. So we had to make all new costumes. So there's two pageants, the Nauvoo pageant and the British pageant. And it's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't worked in the pageant or who hasn't been out there what it's like to go out there. It's like you just go in this little bubble. You walk where Joseph walked. You walked where Brigham Young walked. The history, the people. It's a very spiritual experience. And they say that, there is always a reason for you to be there, that, you just don't show up there by accident, that you're supposed to be there. So anyway, we've done that. And every year that we've gone, it doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the night that we show up, in the afternoon, there's always a couple of fawns right on that same bank. And I always feel like they're greeting us. But we now do, Vernon helps us in costumes. What we found was I work in the men's department, and we needed men to help with dressing the pants. What did we figure? There were 20-something buttons on the pants. And not everybody knows where the buttons go. And anyway, we needed men in there to help. So Vernon has gone in and helped in that. And then this last year he helped with the shoes. But the pageants, as I said, there's two pageants. The British pageant, is about the saints and the events that happened in London, preparing to come and preparing for the missionaries. And it ends when they get to Nauvoo, and the Nauvoo pageant picks up where with the saints arriving in Nauvoo and the experiences that they've had there. So we've had lots of opportunities to share, do missionary work, be representatives of the church. The church history and the events that have happened. I've learned a lot about the events of in Liberty Jail, Far West, Adiamond, Hans Mill, just all of the events. Quincy, the events that were there. Now last year. Was it last year we learned a new word, and that was a Draco, which I had never heard of before, and it's pronounced a couple of things, but it's not a tornado, but it's tornado winds that do destruction. So we've had a lot of experiences out there. We've met a lot of people, general authorities. President Holland came one time and gave us all blessings, and just a lot of experiences.
Do you plan on going back?
We're going back again this year. Last year, we didn't do the 2 years with COVID, that they didn't have the pageants. They have discontinued all of the other pageants except the Easter pageant and the Nauvoo British pageant. And the British pageant they do every 4 years in England, which they did last summer. So it'll be another 4 years before they do it again. But the first year after COVID, we went back. We stayed the whole time. And we ended up both having COVID, and it really did a number on us. So last year we decided we would just do half the time, and so this year we're going to do half the time. So we will show up about a week before everyone else does to help get things set up, and I am in charge of the men's costuming. And so I've got a lot of responsibilities of things that I've got to get done and set up. So we'll get it set up. We will get the first two family cast dressed and started, and then we will come home.
Oh. Well, I've got two things. First of all, are there any other experiences or stories you'd like to share? And the second thing is I'll invite you to close our interview out with a brief testimony.
I can't think of anything else. Do you?
Go ahead.
All right. Well, it's hard for me to share my testimony, and I don't know why it is so hard. I have a very strong testimony of that I know that our Heavenly Father is there, and I know that He cares about us. I know that He is aware of us and the trials and the blessings and everything that we go through. I know that He's there, and I know that He answers our prayers. I've had many experiences where He when I start telling, I say, and it just happened to be, but I know that it just didn't happen to be. I know that our Heavenly Father puts us where we need to be, and people in our ways to help us. I have a very strong testimony of Joseph Smith and the restoration of the church, the trials that he went through, the experiences that happened. I know that he is a true prophet, and I know that President Nelson is our prophet here at our time, and I know that if we just stay true, and if we do what we are supposed to do, that we will be blessed. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
I think we're at testimony meeting day, and you listen, you get little pieces out of everybody's testimony that stirs you a little bit. And reading, particularly last conference, some of them, listening to it and then listening some of the quotes and things that come up, and realizing that the people that are speaking from their hearts, and they know that there is that truth, and then that embeds in you that you have that feeling that, and like Lynn said, there's so many times that we've seen interventions in our life that the Lord helped us out, or at least were given thoughts in our mind to be able to make the right decisions on certain things. So I appreciate Lynn enduring the fact of in the early days of our marriage that she was that example that gave me a testimony finally, and the example of our children also, that what their mother has instilled in them and how it's grown. And I'm hope that they see me doing good in their lives. They tell me I do sometimes, but just don't work them to death at girls' camp or something. We're going to go up and dig a ditch again, but I think a lot of their skills they've learned to repair and do things, they've learned from being and doing those things that they know they should have done. They might have begrudgingly done some of them, but they knew that they need to do that service. So that increases a person's testimony as you continue in life. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, both of you, for sharing these experiences and feelings with us. It's been a great interview, and good luck in Nauvoo this summer.